Madeleine Joelson, Executive Director of Turkish Democracy Project. Welcome to Al-Arabiya.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
What does the ongoing detention of Osman Kavala mean to Turkey and to the human rights advocates calling for his release?
First and foremost, the case of Osman Kavala is, the case of a human rights activist who has been detained in Turkey for 4 years without conviction and without a fair trial. The reason why it has taken on so much significance within the international community, and particularly the international human rights community, is that his case has really come to represent exactly how the liberal order has been degraded in Turkey since Erdogan came to power. Kavala has been accused of participating in and orchestrating 2 major events, the 2013 Gezi Park protest in Istanbul and the 2016 coup attempt against the government. The reason why his case is so significant is that he, like thousands of others of Turkish citizens, has been swept up in a sort of full frontal assault by the government on the rights of civil society members and teachers, judges, policemen. Over 160,000 of these civil service members have been dismissed in Turkey. 77,000 have been formally arrested. The point is that the Kavala case has come to represent all of those individuals. But it's also the story of one man who's been held in a prison whose conditions have been described as inhumane for 4 years. And so it's also about the struggle of that man and his family.
What do you say to those who question your support for the release of Osman Kavala, saying he is facing very serious charges for taking part in a military coup to topple democratically elected government? What would you say to them?
If it were possible for Kavala to have a fair trial in these conditions, then by all means let him have it. But that's not what we're dealing with here. This is not a case of national security. Turkey has been increasing its surveillance and its attack on civil liberties since 2014, since Erdogan came to power, and 2 years before the coup. Every year since 2014, the number of Turkish citizens who are under investigation for crimes against the state has gone up every year, to the point where now 15% of the population is under formal investigation. The point is that between those assaults on civil liberties and Erdogan's total takeover of the judicial system in Turkey, a fair trial is not possible for Kavala.
Does Mr. Kavala's case also constitute a test of Turkey's relationship with liberal democracies around the world?
Absolutely. You see this happening with the Council of Europe, who has ruled that Kavala needs to be released. Turkey is a member of the Council of Europe, and as such, it is beholden to the rulings of the European Court of Human Rights. So this case is leaning on a lot of already existing tensions between Turkey and the liberal world order, not just the case of human rights and the question of Turkey's EU membership, but also Turkey's purchase of the S-400 missile system from Russia, which has put its status as a NATO ally, as a reliable NATO ally, in serious doubt. This case is bringing to the forefront a lot of the tensions that are sort of already existing between Erdogan himself and democratic powers around the world.
The Council of Europe, we just have mentioned, said that it will begin infringement proceedings against Turkey if Kavala is not released. Do you think the Council in Europe is capable to carry such a threat, taking in consideration the long, laborious process?
It can be, but Turkey, as a member of the Council of Europe, is beholden to the rulings of the Court of Human Rights. So it is extremely important in this moment that bilateral bodies like the Council of Europe hold strong to their purported defense of human rights, and in this case, come to the aid of the Turkish people.
Turkey still wields the threat of refugees over the European Union, something that the Europeans always have in mind, while the US is afraid of pushing a vital geostrategic ally into the arms of Moscow. Don't you agree that these two factors alone give the Turkish leader plenty of power over his Western detractors?
You're right to point out these two leverage points that Erdogan uses frequently, the threat of refugees and his purchase of the S-400 system from Russia, which of course makes him a very unsuitable and frankly dangerous NATO ally. But I think it's important to keep in mind that these are the only two cards that Erdogan has, and he plays them frequently, and he plays them smartly. But every time he plays them, he suffers consequence. So, for example, when he threatened to expel the 10 ambassadors over their comments regarding Osman Kavala's release, the response of the international world order was that the value of the lira dropped 1.5%. In fact, the lira tends to drop every time Erdogan abuses his power. Right now it's depreciated this year by 23%, and it's at an all-time low. So there are consequences to Erdogan's actions, and it is important for bodies like the Council of Europe and for NATO to remember that they have a strong hand and they need to play it strongly.
Has the Kavala case now become a critical test of the ability of international bilateral institutions and liberal Western powers to influence President Erdogan?
I believe that this is a very important moment for the liberal world order to speak out against the assault that Erdogan is carrying out against the human rights of his own people. The Council of Europe has the ability to stand behind its professed value in human rights and to hold the current Turkish president to account for his crimes against his people. We've already seen signs that the world order is willing to do this. So, for example, the Financial Action Task Force has graylisted Turkey during its plenary meeting this month, which puts Turkey on a small list of countries, including Pakistan, that have failed to combat money laundering and terrorist financing sufficiently. So this is one way in which bilateral institutions can put a check on Turkey's abuse of power.
During this interview, you saw doubt on Turkey as a reliable NATO ally. Turkey under Erdogan still pays its NATO membership fees, but does it still subscribe to the value that underpin the transatlantic alliance?
It's a really important question, because I think it's easy to forget that NATO is not just a military alliance, but it is meant to be an alliance of values. At this point, Erdogan specifically, Turkey under Erdogan is a NATO member in name only. Historically, Turkey has been a member of NATO since 1954, and it has been an important ally, or rather a responsible actor on the world stage and within the NATO alliance. Under Erdogan, not only has Turkey put the alliance in jeopardy through its purchase of Russian missile systems, but Erdogan has completely overrun the values which were supposed to define NATO countries. And those values include all of the things I've been mentioning: human rights, civil liberties, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, none of which at this point exist in Turkey.
Time has caught up with us, but this week, 6 leaders of 6 opposition parties in Turkey negotiated a broad alliance among themselves and appear to have agreed on turning the 2022 election into a kind of a referendum on the presidential systems. President Erdogan introduced, of course, this presidential system 4 years ago and considers it one of his proudest achievements. How does the West look to this system?
I think democracies the world over would have to point to the presidential system as a failed democracy, and the reason for that is primarily the sweeping executive power that the new system gave to the office of the president under Erdogan in response to the coup, but in a sort of outsized response. Erdogan took advantage of the coup attempt, rather not the coup, took advantage of the coup attempt in order to quash opposition, in order to get rid of checks and balances, in order to subsume essentially every branch of government, including the Ministry of Justice, under the executive branch. So in terms of regular measures of democracy, whether there's a free press, there isn't. Erdogan has, I think the Reporters Without Borders estimates that 90% of Turkish press is government or state owned or influenced. In terms of freedom of speech, as I've noted, that doesn't exist in Turkey because of the ease with which you can be arrested or investigated for charges such as insulting the president. All of these factors make the possibility of free and fair elections under this current presidential system nearly impossible. And so the answer to your question is that it would fail the test of democracy.
Madeleine Joelson, Executive Director of Turkish Democracy Project, we thank you for this exclusive interview, and we thank you for your insight and wish you the very best of luck with your organization.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.